Good afternoon, traders. Welcome to the Wave Theory class. Let's hope we have everybody in. There should be some new traders in. Alexei in. I don't see. Oh, yes, you're in. Great. Yeah. Let's go. You'll watch the recording. Alexei, you'll choose your time frame when you read in the group. Give me the time frame. I'll add you to the group, and the person in that group will help you out there to catch up. Let's start. So yesterday we did the MACD review on the MACD, and I think I got a lot of, finally I'm getting a lot of message where people are starting to see things the way they should see it in terms of what is an ABC and what's a WXY and why we need a WXY, because the potential for another wave up, at least you're warned, you're aware that it could happen, so you can go for it. Today what we are going to do is we're going to look at the patterns themselves, which means I'll be looking at the flats, and probably we'll do triangles, and if we have time we will do diagonals, ending diagonals, leading diagonals, so you can have it. So we're going to search in the charts. We're going to look in the charts for where they are. I hope the traders in the past would help me with this, because sometimes we go back, look for them. The old ones are gone too far, we can't find them, and we have to look for some new ones, right? But what we're going to do is still give you an idea how to actually find them. All questions at the end of the webinar, because some people are here only for an hour. They have to leave, and we'll take the questions after they leave, right? So we will take all the questions. Just keep them for after the end of the class. We'll answer them. Maybe by the time the class is finished, you'll have your question and answer, right? So let's go. I'll go back to the Pung since I was using the Pung. Where is my Pung chart? That's a good question. Oh, I took it down during the news. Let me bring it back. Yes, I'll remove everything. Go to the monthly and then remove everything. Come back to here. We'll always be using this, and you'll always start by removing everything from your chart, right? So today we'll be looking at flats. I think for flats it's pretty easy. All of you know what the flats are and the type of flats we have. So we have only added one thing. We have added two things news to the flats you've read about in Elliott wave. What you've learned in the Elliott wave, that a flat is a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave structure, right? An A, a B, and a C in an up wave, right? This is what you have learned. Now, we have changed that a little. And what we have changed is that you don't necessarily have a 5 wave in this. We have seen many flats with 3 waves within the C wave structure. I'm going to show you them so you will be able to identify them. You will see that there are actually only 3 waves in there. So rather than a 5 wave structure in the C wave, you're going to find that you may have 3, 3, 3. So that is one change that you need to bear in mind, that is not as the book has it. Now, I'm not doubting that when Elliott did his testing, he found 5 waves in the C waves in many of them. I'm just saying the charts as they are today, you can find waves with 5s and you can find them with 3s. And I'll show you that, right? One other thing we made changes to what Elliott doesn't have, besides the fact that you have a regular flat, you have an expanding flat, and you have a running flat. We also add a contracting flat. That is where the C wave does not go above, but it also doesn't go below the A wave, right? It's more like the regular flat, except that this C wave didn't go below. So we have, that's a new one that we identify, because we've seen those patterns as well, and we call them contracting flats, right? Because they are contracting, as you can see, right? So instead of 3 flats, we have 4 flats that we look for. So let's go look for them, and I'll show you how you will identify them. So if we're looking at a monthly chart and you have to identify what you're looking for, you have an impulse, you have your first wave up, right? That's the first impulse up. The next one that broke it would be this one. So this would be your next impulse up. And we broke the top, we never broke the low. This would be a regular flat. I think that is easy, right? That's the easy part. A regular flat. That whole structure will be a regular flat. You look for your impulse, you look for the next impulse that break, and if it doesn't break the low, you got a regular flat. What you would find is that inside of this, you have an impulse. We didn't break the low or the top. We got another move up. We didn't break the low or the top, and we didn't come back and break this low. You see, we never broke that low again. So this is the part that will give everybody difficulty. What is this structure? How would you identify that structure? Remember, number one rule, the number one rule we would use when we are going to identify a corrective structure is we would try to put maximum correction in the corrective structure. The impulses will have, in a corrective structure, let me just get this clear. The impulses, we will try to put them as looking alike. So if this first impulse is a single wave, we will try to let the second impulse be a single wave, which means all the corrections in here, all the other waves in here will be within the B wave correction or the Y wave correction, depends on whether we're looking at a WXY or an ABC. Right? You will be, remember, corrective structures are time factors. They're based on this axis, right? They're time structures. Impulses are on this axis. So if you're taking corrections to be a time factor, it means the correction within the correction should also be the time factor. So it should be the one that has all the other things inside, right? And that means you're looking at the B wave to be the correction within that correction. And within that B wave, if you have a structure as big as this, within that B wave, you're going to have an impulse. You would likely have a correction, and you probably have another impulse. Right? Because we would look at that B wave as a structure itself. And that means we would look at this as a contracting flat. Right? So you have a regular flat, and you have this is a contracting flat, and the whole structure is a regular flat. See? So there are two flats in there, but there are many more. I mean, on this time frame, there are two very distinctive ones, but there are many more in here. How you're going to look at this piece, and how you're going to look at this piece, and how you're going to look at all of that. But just to simplify it on this time frame, we will be looking at two major flats. Right? This piece might be a little complicated in here. When we come to that, when we go in the lower time frame, I'll show you how you're going to break that up and how you put them together to make structures. Because remember, in all corrective structure, there's an impulse, a correction, and an impulse, regardless of time frame. Whether it's a 1 minute, 5 minute, 1 month, 10 months, it doesn't matter. The structure does not change. Right? The structure remains the same. It's going to be lower degrees or higher degrees, but it remains the same. So that means they don't change in different time frame. You memorize them, you remember how they look, and now you come and you identify them. This one is pretty easy. This one is not a hard one. If you come across here, you can see there's another flat here. This one, I think you can all identify as an expanding flat. In this case, we will not see how many waves is in this. So we'll go with a single wave in both of them. This is the same thing. You would go with single waves in both of them. You can see a three-wave structure slightly in this, but you'll go with single waves in both of them. Right? There is only one exception to the rule. One exception. I should say two exceptions. When the last wave will not be looking similar to the first wave. Most of you know those exceptions already. The first one is when we have a sharp impulse, we have a B wave, and then we start to make a channel, which we very much identify as a squeezed. The A, the B, and the squeeze. This structure will not look like this one. And the second one is when you have an A, a B, and then you have an ending diagonal for a C. This structure will not look like this. So I'm going to show you those immediately. I'm going to go to the euro yen to show you what it looks like in the higher time frame. And here is a classical one of an ABC where you will not find it. You can see the divergence in here. When you go lower, you'll see it. This is an ending diagonal structure. That is your B wave, and that's your A wave. So this structure will not, the A wave will not look like the C wave. This is one. I think the second one, which most of you have known, is where you see an AB squeeze. We see it so much time, so different places that I don't know where. I can find one in the Peng Yen and show you immediately. All of you know this one. This is the most famous one. Go to the 4 hour, right? This is a very popular one, so everybody knows this one here. This AB squeeze, right? You have an A wave. In this case, the B wave you can look at as a contracting flat. and you have the squeeze going down, right? So all of you know it. Those are the only two cases when we don't look at the C wave to look like that. Remember, you see what I did immediately? I put all the bigger waves within a corrective structure. Remember always, especially when in your high times, you're always trying to look at a correction of having minimum 3 waves within it. There are very rare cases where the correction would have one sharp wave. And I think we will relook at that at some point where there's one sharp wave and inside of that sharp wave, there is a 3-wave structure. Most of the time we will find a corrective structure, like 98% of the time you will find a corrective structure that has 3 waves inside. So your job is to identify that structure. And the MACD will help you. When you see a sharp wave like that, and you notice this first wave down here that comes, right? You will notice this when this starts to do this. And you will notice you're starting to get divergence. You will start to look at this, that this is the peak and this is starting to do this. And you know that you might not get divergence. And when you see this, you have 99.99%, right? 99.99% guarantee this thing is going to go up. We will leave 0.001 for you. And most of you were not in the group when this was happening. And you remember what I keep saying? This thing will go up. All of you remember, this is a famous one, right? Because the trolls were there saying, I don't know what he's talking about. This thing is not going up, right? Well, the reason, now you know why I was saying that, right? Now you have the confidence and you're seeing it and you're like, oh, I can see why he was so sure. Why we were so sure in our group, except for the people who was not in our group were saying, well, we don't know what he's saying, right? This thing keeps going down, it keeps going down, it keeps going down. And then we said, no, watch for this. Because we see these patterns. And when you see those patterns, most of the time, like I said, they behave that way, right? So when you see these things, you start knowing, you start recognizing them, you start seeing them all over the place. You know, it's like once you see the patterns, you can unsee them, right? Once you start recognizing how they behave, there is no change to that. You will forever start seeing them. You will start seeing them all over the place, even where you were not seeing them before because you were not paying attention to that. You didn't know how to recognize them. So remember those 2 exceptions. In all other cases, we will try to put, like if I'm looking at this, the reason we're looking at this and we're saying this could possibly be an A, a B, and a C within this whole structure. If you go like this within this structure, and put it in a daily, so this could be a good one for you to know also since we're looking at flats. We have to look at this structure, this whole structure, and it has to make sense to us, right? That whole structure has to make sense to us. And by making sense, it has to tell us one thing. It has to tell us what pattern is in there. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to scan it to tell you all the patterns you know in the world. And there isn't much of them that you should know, right? Which means you know all the type of patterns that exist, unless there's a new pattern that we haven't seen before, right? So we know all the patterns and we know this is our first impulse. And you can see that, right? We broke the top, but we're still having divergence. So we would probably think this is making an ABC. So if that is your A, the question is, where is your B wave, right? This is how you start looking at patterns. Where is my B wave? So we thought this was our B wave and that we are going for a C wave. Remember what I said? We want the C wave to look like the A wave, except for 2 situations when it's not. One of those conditions is when you're making an ending diagonal or when you're making a squeeze. Well, you can see that when we started to do this, we said, okay, if they break the top, if this one breaks the top, and my forecast was showing you exactly that, it's going to break the top and then do this. And it didn't do that. Now, remember what I started with yesterday. We will always make forecasts using the simple 1, 2, 3. More than 50% of the time, the chart will not behave like that. So when you see me do a forecast like that, I'm not saying that, hey, this is going to be a flat. I'm saying we're looking for a corrective structure. However that structure behaves, we will follow it. We don't know what the final part of that structure will look like, but we're not going to start to focus. We're not going to make a forecast on all kind of fancy stuff that could develop there. We know it could develop like that. We're just going to keep it simple. 1, 2, 3, that's it. And when I said 1, 2, 3, I'm not giving you wave count. I'm counting the waves. Those are two different things. Giving wave count is what is going to be ABC or WXY. Counting the waves is counting 1, 2, 3. So when I said 1, 2, 3, don't take that as a labeling, right? And especially if you're in this group, you should know that. I'm not labeling anything. I'm just telling you how many waves we expect in there. So this still has to be a flat. Nothing has changed in this. But what has changed is this structure here. This made 1. It pulled back. If it had done this, we would expect it to do this, and then we'll expect it to do that. That was the pattern I thought they were going to make, an ending diagonal, right? That did not happen. What happened is they made a very sharp move. They made a flat in the middle. I think all of you can see that flat now that we've just identified flat, that is clearly a flat, and you got another impulse. Here is the problem. That's not how the C wave should look. The C wave could look like that only on one condition, that we probably get another flat in here. We get another flat in here. And then we get another impulse. And then we will look at this and say, okay, I can see why this is looking like that. Right? That is a possibility. That you start thinking about the possibilities of what a C wave could look like. So in this case, only if the C wave does this, then we will say, okay, this is the end of the C wave when we are going down. And in that case, we'll still have divergence. Right? But it didn't do that either. We don't know if it's going to do that as yet. But for now, we can make an assumption. What if this is just the A part of the correction? That's the A wave of the correction. And this is making a 1, 2, 3, which is a flat by itself for the B part of the correction. And now we are going down for the C part of the correction. And all of this will give you what? Either an expanding flat. What are the patterns we know that could develop? Once we break this top, let's make an assumption that we are still in the B wave. We broke the top, but we're still in the B wave, right? Your thoughts come, well, I know only 2 patterns that are flats and that could break the top and still go back to give you another impulse to the upside. That is if it makes a running flat. Come here, don't break this low. Sorry, let me put a line at the low so you guys could see it. Come back here. Don't break the low and give us another impulse before they come down. This will be a running flat. Or come here, break the low, go back up, and this will be an expanding flat. So now we know immediately, right? Running flat, expanding flat. So now we know, well, I don't think they're going to be a triangle because this, if they were triangle, they wouldn't have done this, right? Triangle, when they're showing you for expanding triangle, what you would look for, Alan, you look for in an expanding triangle, you start to look for all the waves, similarities in all the waves within the triangle, right? These waves will all start to look very similar to each other. You notice this one is not similar to this one. So we immediately exclude expanding triangle, right? So we're left with 2 now. We're left with expanding flat or running flat. See? So you're doing it pieces by pieces. You know that this thing could be worse than that. It could get much more worse than that, which means it might be a hell of a lot of other options developing within here. If you remember the Punkat, right? I'll show you the Punkat, how the Punkat developed. But here's the thing, it doesn't stop you from trading. Remember, we trade this up, we're trading it down. But understanding, analyzing, and understanding what it can do is what is the good thing now, because we're not expecting this to go down here. We're expecting this to come here. We're expecting this to come. I will put it as an expanding flat. I'll go with the radical part. I'll put it as an expanding flat, breaking this low. I'm expecting it to go back up here. Come on. I'm expecting this to go back up. Oh, what's wrong with this? I'm expecting this to go back up here, make an impulse, and then, only then, we'll expect this to go down. Now remember, it could be more complex than this, right? This whole thing could be more complex than that, but this is what we're looking for right now. So this would either be a running or an expanding flat. What we're going to do is we're going to track this to see how this is developing as it goes. This could be an ending diagonal here. It could be anything. It could be a whole lot of different possibility coming down there. We're going to watch that as it comes here. We're going to watch it in relationship to everything else, and then we will see how this develops. So this is how you will put your structure. And the only way you can do this is you have to know all the possibilities of structures, right? You have to know all those patterns. You have to know what they would look like, how they can develop. And this is how you do it. You do it step by step. If there's any change in here, remember there's still that option of them making a tree wave like this, another flat in here, 1, 2, 3, and then go back up. We're not going with that because that I've never seen that pattern. So we're not going to go with that. I've never seen them do such a C wave with that complexity in it. Now, we can't exclude it, but I've never seen it. So we're going to go with the most common ones we have seen. And the most common one is this is going to make a running or expanding flat, right? We can go with running one. That will be okay. I have no problem with that. The running flat will come back, break the low. It will be one single wave down, come back, don't break the low, and go back up. So these are this is what you know now. So that will influence how you're going to trade that wave coming down. You're going to start watching it as it's coming lower and lower and lower because you know that that's not the impulse to the downside. See, this is how you're going to do it. You're going to take them step by step. So you've got a flat in the middle here, and that is why I think this is a B wave. This is a very complex structure with a B wave in the middle here. See? And that B wave is what type of flat? I think that's just a contracting flat. Actually, yes, this is a contracting flat. I didn't think we broke the low here. You had a nice flag here for a buy, and that turned out to be an amazing trade. Right? So now that the structure has changed into this, we were looking at this structure as a whole lot of different possibilities before this happened. Now that this happened, these are the possibilities you're looking at. So if you think that could happen, all you have to do is have enough proof of reasons to sell. See, as long as you remain in the downtrend and you get a correction up, you're getting enough reasons to sell it because now you know with a high probability where this wave could likely go. And this means we're going to expect it to go more down. So as long as it keeps doing what you think it's going to do, which means if you get a corrective structure here, you look for a sell. See how that will influence? Because remember, everything you do on the chart will influence what you're looking for. What's your next trade? It will create a bias in you. And that bias is what you're going to trade. You're going to trade the bias. So our bias right now on this chart is to the downside. And that is because based on the analysis we have, we think it's doing this. And we cannot look at any other possibilities because we don't have any other analysis. We're not seeing any other possible patterns right now. That's the only possible patterns we're seeing right now. So that's how we're going to look at it. So we have seen expanding flat, we see contracting flat, we saw regular flat, right? Running flats, let's go find a running flat somewhere. I'm pretty sure there's a whole ton of them somewhere. And I'm not looking at the lower degrees yet. We'll come and look at them, right? Regular flats that you can see every now and then all over the place, right? We're looking at, you know, the bigger ones as they go. I think right in here, you will find a whole set of running flats. As a matter of fact, this is another contracting flat we're looking at. Let me find a running flat for you right here. So we got 1, we got 2, we got 3, and then we go up. That's a running flat. That's what it looks like. See? So you've seen all the flats. We can find, let's find one in a higher time frame for you. I think there is a lot of them. Let's go back to the Pung and find it in the Pung. Why not? The Pung. And you start seeing them. The good thing is after this now, you'll start seeing these structures very, very clear, right? They become crystal clear to you as you start looking at them, right? I think you can see it immediately. The impulse, the correction, and the impulses. Right? It's looking like, how the hell didn't I see those things before, right? You can see them so clear now that if you look at the chart, you'll start thinking, okay, here's my impulse. That's a 1, 2, 3. I'll go with this for contracting flat. Next move down. We got a correction here. See that correction there? Actually, this correction was perfectly forecast when we did it. If you're looking at my chart, you'd see that we know when that one was going to go up and we know it was going to be a correction. This piece, when you see these, this will help you. Let me just show you this. This will help. When we see this, especially this piece, let's go, this piece will help. When we see a very sharp move up, right? We're in a downtrend and we are still in the downtrend. But we saw a very sharp move up, and the next impulse to the downside, which should have been like this, starts to do something like this. Your immediate thought is you're making an expansion, either an expanding flat or a running flat. And then you're going to go down. So remember that. That's one way how you're going to identify expanding structure. And I'll show you a very big one so you have an idea what it looks like, a much clearer idea on the CAD. I'll show you a very, very big one on the CAD and the daily, which we started to identify way back. You got a sharp move up, and it's followed by a very sharp move down. So your thought process would be, okay, we probably are going to do 2, and then we're going to do 3, and then we will go, right? So let's say at this point, we were thinking, okay, what if that is a contracting flat and this should go? Well, we bought here, it goes, it come back, give you a break even, never go anywhere. So you're thinking, wait a second, what happened there? And this is what happens. Remember, when we come to do strategy, you'll see we have something that says when it doesn't go, get rid of it, it's not going. Because after every consolidation, when you have an impulse, after every consolidation, the next impulse has to go. So if the next impulse, can you guys keep your question to the end? We will answer them. Just take a note of where the question was and we'll answer them, because if we stop to answer questions, we'll just be answering questions. So when you get an impulse and it starts to do this and it breaks this, but it's not going, it's doing this, you will want to get out of that trade. Because when it starts to do this, this is what it will do. At some point, that will go. You will get the impulse, but you might not get the impulse when you thought you're getting it. You just get a much complex B wave structure before you get the impulse. So when we saw this started to happen, this was a sell setup, as you can see. But because this is the impulse, we barely broke the top. We got a sharp move down here and we got that. You can't make sense out of that a lot, right? So here was what we thought at that point. Okay, what if this here is your flat to go down? And then I said, you know what, guys, this doesn't look like a C wave. It doesn't look like the A wave. It's not a pattern that we know. Let's look at this. Is this some kind of a ending diagonal? No. Is it some kind of a squeeze? No. It's not anything that we know that should be a C wave. Here's what you have in it. You have an impulse, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you get another impulse. So how do we put those 5s in perspective? Let's put it like this and see what happens there. That looks more like a flat in the middle there to me, right? So you probably, we can easily go with this option. 1, 2, 3. A flat in the middle, and then another one. So we could go with an A, a B, and a C wave there, depending on whether we had divergence or WXY. And that by itself is a corrective structure. So if this is a corrective structure and you have a sharp impulse here, you want another sharp impulse here, and then you should continue to go up. So when you see this now in the future, when you see this impulse that doesn't make sense to you, breaking the top there, you start thinking, okay, do I have a sharp one here? And am I making a sharp one here? I'm going back up. That's either a running or expanding flat in the middle. And you will see them pretty often now. Once you start seeing that, you will see it very often, right? So when you come back here, you're going to see, this one is just a regular flat, but you can see the sharpness of the impulses. The impulses are sharp move, corrections are not, right? So what we are doing here right now, we're making a single sharp move to the upside. So what am I thinking? Well, this should probably make a corrective structure down here, make back another impulse there, and then we should see downside. Now, this is not a very, very sharp move. So if they're making that all the correction, well, we will still look for the sell. Why would you still look for the sell? Well, you're either going to have a B wave, which you can take as a break-even trade in the worst case scenario, or you're going to have a sharp impulse down, if that is all the correction. So when you have a big move like that, that broke the structure, you're always looking for that possibility, right? So in this case, you take the sell, it becomes a B wave, you look for the C wave, and then you look for the big wave down. And the C wave, you would want to buy because it could be a very, very sharp spike, right? So I think we have another, I'm trying to remember where we have another one like that, even on the pound where we have that very, very sharp structure. Very, very sharp structure. Let me see where we can find. Here is one, for example. This wasn't very sharp, and this one was a little iffish because you see this had a very strong correction in the middle, right? So we were thinking that is all the correction until they started to do this. And this also didn't look very nice, right? With this one does have a nice flat in the middle here, a running flat. You can see that. But once they started to make this sharp move down, we're like, you have to confirm it with a correction to continue. And instead they go back up. So we put this tree here, and then you see it very clearly, right? So guess what if they're going down now? See how easy it becomes now? What will confirm that this is the start of the downside? Not until you get this can you confirm that this is going to happen. So when you see structure like this and you're thinking, well, is this going to go back up? Well, maybe it's going to go back up, but right now, if you look at the structure, have we had a sharp move like that that actually just takes off to the upside? No. This one will have to be followed by a sharp move like this, followed by a pullback, and then you can go. So you will wait for this pullback to confirm the go. See, they never just go, right? This one just didn't drop like that. This one actually made the move up. You can see this structure here, right? You can see this structure here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, a sharp move up, and then they drop. We forecast that. We saw that coming, right? We saw this piece going up back. That whole structure was there, we followed. And the same thing here. We knew this one was going to go back up as well, right? Because we started looking at the structure. You started understanding where you're going to get. Here is your best buy coming, right? So if you get one like that after an impulse, what you're expecting them to do here? Confirm that you have a structure for a sell. So you would hear me say, even in the 60 minutes, wait for the confirmation before you buy or sell. That means wait for the corrective structure to happen. In some cases, it's just a flag, and then get into the trade. That means you're waiting for it to happen before you get it, right? So what is this right now in this whole big structure? Put it back on the weekly. Just a correction, right? These are the impulses, correction, correction, that's a smaller, lower degree correction. Correction, this is the highest degree correction in that whole thing. So what we were expecting. So what you need to do now is go into this structure and figure out, is this structure over, right? Remember, what that structure has to be is a single pattern. Always remember that whole thing has to be one single pattern that we know. And in that pattern that we know, what are the corrective structures you know? 3 waves, 5 waves. That's not a triangle, that's excluded, right? That's not an end, that's not some kind of a ending or leading diagonal, that's excluded. So you're left with one single thing to look at, right? A flat pattern in there. And then you go into it and you look at the daily now and you said, okay, let's see what we have in here. You have an impulse. You'll always start with an impulse. You have 1, 2, 3. This is pretty easy, right? You have a contracting flat. You've got another impulse. You've got a pullback, got another impulse, pullback, another impulse, and you pull back. So you're like, well, what the hell is that? Remember, there's only one case where if that is making a C wave, it will not look like this, but we know that's not a C wave. So we can see this structure, and we know it's not a C wave. If you learned that anything yesterday, that's what you learned, that that's not a C wave. So what corrective structure we know that are not ABCs? Right? That's the question. So you know only one corrective structure that's not ABC, a W, X, Y, X, Z, and then downside. See how easy it becomes now? So your question now is, do we have a WXYXZ? No. Let's filter. Let's go back to the weekly and see what we have. You go back to the weekly, one piece. Okay, let's go 2 days. It seems like we have 1, 2, 3. So we have a W. We have an X, very nice X wave. And we have a Y. And is the Y completed? No. Can the Y get more extended? Yes. So it doesn't matter what happens in here. This remains, as of now, this remains a corrective structure for us. Nothing has changed, right? A WXYXZ wave could also be just one part of any bigger correction, right? Let me just explain that. Let me come to that part here so you can know. So you got a W, X, Y, X, Z. This is a complete structure, which means this structure, and this is a question I got yesterday from somebody, we'll come to that on the ABC part. This structure is complete. So this structure coming down here, by all means, have to be a bigger structure of its own, separate. This has to be one piece in the MACD, and this has to be one piece in the MACD. It also has to break the trend line. What that means? That means if you get WXYXZ, right? Let's make it a channel, WXYXZ. When that is finished, you have to have an ABC, then followed by an XWXYXZ, or that is all the correction and you go down if you're coming from the top. So 2 options. This could be all the correction, or that could be one part of the correction in a bigger corrective structure. I hope that makes sense. Because remember, they can develop in bigger and bigger and bigger size, bigger degrees before they go. Now, we don't know, but you can trade each part of that, because once you get the Z wave and you start coming down, you know that you are going to have a bigger move that will break that structure, right? It will break. There's no question about that. So you know that. So this one now, this is how we can trade it. We only have the Y wave. There is a possibility we are going to make an X wave, then a Z wave, then come down. There's a possibility we're not going to make that. But remember, if you're making the X wave, an X wave has to be like this. So if this is the first wave down for the X wave, we have to get one more up, and we have to get one more down. See? So even if you're not in that buy, you can take this sell. And there's a reason you will take that sell. It's either a C wave and an X wave, or a Y wave and an X wave, or literally it's going down. And this was all the Y wave you have, and we're not going to get a Z wave. And that is also possible, where you don't get the Z wave. What we have noticed is most time when you have an extended Y wave, especially in the yen pairs, we had a lot of extended Y waves in the yen pairs, you don't get the Z waves. Right? So you would have to look at this to see which is going to go. In terms of trading, you can trade it even if it's making the Y wave, even if it's making the X wave. Because that C wave to the downside, we traded this down, right? We traded that down. We knew that it was going to come. We thought if that was all the contracting flat, this would go down, right? So we traded it down just in case. What if that was the contracting flat and this was going down? You wouldn't know that then, right? But hindsight, you're going to know, right? Each pattern has a sign of upside or downside, or they can go up or down. No, each pattern has one direction. If it's very clear, if the pattern is completed and it's very clear, there's only one direction. Does that make sense? A flat in a triangle like this one, when we saw this, one direction this was going to break to. I think what your question is asking, how do you know when it's completed? Because we did not know that this was completed. We did not know that that 3 wave was the one that is going to go down. That's a contracting flat. And in a contracting flat, you have a number of options, right? So with that question asked, I'm going to go straight into this contracting flat one, because I think this is the important one with flats that you need to know. When you have a contracting pattern like that showing, let me make it bigger, and I'm going to bring it like this so you can see. Everybody can still see the 3 waves up, right? Or let me draw it. It's going to be easy. I'll draw it and then I'll come back to it. You have an impulse. You have one wave up. You have one wave down, and you're getting another wave up like this. You start to get a contraction. What's your thought process? Knowing all the patterns you know, what is your thought process here? Contracting flat, that's one option. Any other options? Contracting triangle, that's another option, right? Diagonal, definitely not. Expansion, definitely not. We're contracting. I show you it's contracting, right? So there are two things you're thinking of right away, right? This could be a contracting flat or a contracting triangle. So let's go. You get another wave that comes down here. And you're saying to yourself, okay, great. It's either going to break here and go. That's a contracting flat. They can come back up here, right? That becomes a contracting triangle, and then we're going to go down, right? Very clear, very simple, very nice. Here is the third option that will confuse you. And once I figure out that third option, I think it was a couple of years back, I'll show you where we figure it out. And then we realize, hey, you got to take into consideration that this is actually making a contracting flat in the middle here. And then you do this, and then you come down. That's the third option. The B wave becomes a contracting flat. As a matter of fact, the B wave could be a fourth option in the B wave. Anybody want to tell me what, not my trader who completed the course, anybody want to tell me where the fourth option of that B wave could be? Not a contracting flat, but a contracting triangle. Down here, and then up there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up. All my traders know where we had a pattern like that. The new traders will not know that, but I'll show you. Let's go to copper, and that's where we figure out that that's an option also. Right? Remember when we were making the forecast on this copper here? On this piece? We started by looking the pattern like this. We started thinking, okay, this is probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we will go down. If you look at my very first forecast, I think that's how it should be in the 4-hour. Let me see if we have it in the 4-hour there. That was the very first forecast we made. We were thinking, guys, we have a perfect triangular pattern in the making. I think it was somewhere here we made it, or somewhere here we made that. I can't find it anymore. I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere there. So we were thinking, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. This will make a fifth one, and then we'll go down. Perfect, right? I think we started making the forecast here, and this was a good buy. Our traders buy that. And then it started to come down. We sold it for downside, but then it started to go back up, took us out. And then we said, wait a second. Actually, this thing has, immediately, I think we changed it. We looked at it and we changed it. Actually, this is what it's doing. You have a wave up. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you should go up. We made that forecast before this wave started. Or while this wave was breaking up, we were like, okay, guys, I think we have a B wave contracting flat. And now we're going up for that wave up. I think only 2 of our traders were in this wave, and they kept it to somewhere like here, and then they took it off. So that is the next option you have to remember, that the B wave could be a contracting flat, and they're going to go. Once you start seeing those contraction, you start thinking of all the possible options within that contraction. And remember, all starts with an impulse. Right? So that impulse could be part of the entire wave itself, if it's a 5-wave only, as a triangle. But very often you find that they become more complex like this, becoming a triangle within there. So you can buy this, you can sell this, and then you can buy this back up. Once they start breaking here, you look for a reason to buy, or you buy in the break here. That would be a perfect trade for you. The Cadian, as somebody was showing, was the first place where we started to identify that not all triangles are triangles. And some triangles actually are not triangles. They look like they're triangle until you get messed up with it. I think we had that problem in the Cadian. I will find it now. It has to be in the daily. Let me go daily. And I will try to find where we had that triangular pattern that messed us up. Was here. Yeah. We had a perfect reversal. You can see this part here. So we had a perfect impulse. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once it hit, let me put the line itself because I'm going to show you what we actually did. And we were so happy with ourselves. Like, man, we've got this covered. Right? We know what this pattern is. Yeah. We had an entry order here that got tagged and dropped like that. And we were like, great, we got this covered. This is going big time now, right? This thing is going to fall down here and we're going to get this straight here. So just put it to break even and relax. Only to watch it start doing this and going back and like, wait a second, what happened to the triangle? Everybody was like, what the hell happened to the triangle? And that was when we realized, wait a second. This is actually a contracting flat in the middle. We didn't have the terminology contracting flat then. We started identifying contracting flats a little later as contracting flats. And then we realized, well, you had a 1, you had 2, you have 3. You can sell from here now. We did get in. I think we got in the sell somewhere here. That's where we started to figure out we got a sell set up, right? Because by this time we had no idea what it was doing. As you can see the date when that was, right? That was way back in the days. But then we started to figure out and we said, okay, wait a second. Everything that looks like a triangle is not necessarily a triangle. And there are many options of how it could develop. And this becomes the third option, right? The first option is a triangle. The second option is a contracting flat in the middle. The third option is a contracting triangle in the middle. And the first option should be this one. The fifth option is this thing is actually a contracting flat and it's going down. So when you're going to make your forecast, you're going to take into consideration all those possibilities. Does that qualify to be an overthrow? Overthrow of what? There isn't anything like an overthrow. It's a regular flat. Forget about all those terminologies you heard somewhere that makes no sense. This is a contracting flat in the middle. This is an impulse, a correction, and an impulse. That's just a regular flat. And it's simple. It's a very, very, very clear regular flat. You look at it, you look, wow. And guess what that whole pattern is? Another regular flat. See, because we are coming from this way, we made a big regular flat, and guess which way we went? See how easy it becomes now once you start seeing it? Can triangle be a Z wave? You tell me why a triangle will never be a Z wave, Andrea. You tell me why. No. You said, can a triangle be a Z wave? The question is, tell me why it will never, ever be a Z wave, a triangle. Exactly. It's a corrective structure, and a Z wave is an impulsive structure. You guys have to know these things. These are the basic stuff, right? So go back and read what is an impulse, what is a correction, so you will learn. What we're looking at right now are corrective structures. Impulses, W, Y, Z are impulses. The X waves are the corrective one, right? So a Z wave is an impulse, and a triangle is a corrective structure. Never, ever don't mix those two up. It can never happen, right? You read in the Elliott wave that a triangle could be a Z wave. I doubt it. It can never be there because a triangle is a corrective structure, right? So it could never be a Z wave. You probably missed something. A diagonal is not a triangle. That's a mistake they have in the book. And that's one of the reasons why I got thrown out of TradingView, if you remember, right? The guy wrote diagonal triangles or triangle diagonal or some crazy stuff like that. That is incorrect. Grammatically, it's incorrect. Mathematically, it's incorrect. it's in all ways incorrect, because a diagonal is a mathematical structure and a triangle is a mathematical structure that we know. Google them. I actually Google it and show everybody. A triangle is this. A diagonal is this. Those are two different structures. Actually, you can see in a triangle, they will show you how to find diagonals in a triangle. That is a diagonal in a triangle. This will be a diagonal in a triangle. See this form here, that will be a diagonal. Let me put a different color. This will be a diagonal in a triangle. This here will be a diagonal in a triangle, right? Those are diagonals in triangle. They're absolutely different structures. Remember when you're talking, so what they wrote when they said triangle diagonal, that was a mistake in the book. So if you learn Elliott wave and you see them make a mistake, you should learn to correct the mistakes. People who don't understand structure, people who don't understand concepts, what they do is they read and they're trying to teach other people by copying there and trying to tell you like a storytelling, tell you exactly without even understanding what they're reading. If you can't correct that mistake in the book, you don't understand anything about the concepts. You don't understand where Elliott is coming from. Elliott wasn't doing abracadabra. He was telling you about mathematical formations. When he said flat, he means it's flat. That's what he's telling you. It's a flat formation. It's a flat formation. When he said triangle, he means it's a triangular formation. When he said diagonal, it means it's a diagonal formation. He was not telling you any abracadabra, as you say, right? He was just telling you mathematical formations that he see. So if you don't understand it, and you confuse what they rewrote. I don't think that was even Elliott word. That is the rewrote in the book that had is a diagonal triangle, because diagonals are not triangles. So once we understand it, we understand where they make their mistakes, right? Yes, Z wave could be diagonal. It could be an ending diagonal, right? But it's not a triangle. A triangle is a triangle. That's a wholly different, a triangle is a corrective structure. Diagonal is an impulsive structure. And that was what I was explaining to the guy who was going to teach people Elliott wave without using it. He says his post said, I don't use Elliott wave in my trading, but I'll teach it. And I was like, you should not do that. It's like going to a doctor and say, he said, well, hey, I'm actually not the heart specialist here. I'm actually a gynecologist, but don't worry, I'll do the operation in your heart. And you were like, you don't want to mistake those places. Please don't do the operation, because you're not, you're not the cardiologist. You're actually the gynecologist. And that is what he was saying. And I was like, my big concern with that was that the moderators and the owners of the company should step in and said, no, don't do that. If you're not using it, then don't try to teach people it, because you have no idea. And they were like, we don't care about the content. We're not responsible for content posted on the site. We're just responsible for many people to come on the site. If you post nonsense on the site, that's your problem. Let people take the nonsense and run with it. And a lot of people do take the nonsense and run with it. That's the problem. So let's come back to what we were doing. Flats, you got it. So we have flats. Let me go to diagonal, since we are on the diagonal structures. And you can see these structures, right? I don't think it becomes difficult for you guys to see them anymore. The impulse is the corrections. The impulse is the corrections. And same here, sharp impulse, corrections. You're making impulse, pull back, impulse, pull back. Can we make an ending diagonal here? Here is a good idea. Can this piece turn into an ending diagonal? Can this piece actually go back one more up? Let's go like this, one more up here, and then come down. See? So one of the things we notice with ending diagonals is that the MACD is going to start to die out. You're going to have continuous divergence. When it's a contracting ending diagonal, you're going to have the MACD showing you the contraction in it. You also have expanding ending diagonals, where the MACD tends to expand, right? You'll see that in an ending diagonal that is expanding rather than contracting. The same thing with leading diagonals, when it's expanding and contracting. We have an expanding in the Aussie. We'll look at that to see if that is there. I can show you where we have an expanding lead. Let me show, well, I showed you an ending diagonal on the euro, right? You guys remember the euro weekly, we have that ending diagonal there. This was pretty easy. Euro yen. Yep, on the weekly here, you have this ending diagonal. You will see the contraction here. you'll see that contraction, and you will see the wave structure here kind of like doing this, and it's easy to see. Actually, that one is easy to see. There are a lot of ending diagonals all over the places. You would not have problem with them. It's easy. The cat has a very nice, the ones that you may have difficulty recognizing is the expanding one. So if you go in the cat and you're looking at this piece, here was a nice expanding leading diagonal. So first you had this wave up, very sharp wave. You had this correction. And I think now you can all recognize 1, 2, 3 as a running flat in the middle of a regular flat, right? Everybody can see that. You can now tell what that was. If you were here before and you couldn't figure out what the hell that was, you can tell what it is now, right? You can see that we have a running flat in the middle of a regular flat, right? 1, 2, 3. How we know that's 3 wave? 1, 2, 3. See how easy it becomes? Your life has just turned to something very simple, right? You're like, darn, I couldn't figure out what that was before, right? And now you started seeing it all over the place, clear. So what was this piece going up that looks like a mess here? You're looking at this and you're thinking, what the hell is this doing here, right? Actually, we identified that pretty early. And I'll bring it down to a daily. I'll draw the 2 lines and then carry it to a daily so you will see it very clear. I'll bring that whole piece down to a daily and you will see. That is a leading diagonal in a big wave that went up, right? This is one wave going up here. See this whole one piece going up? And you have, this is 1, this is 2. You see that correction in there, regular flat? And then you have this. Well, then what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See how easy your life become now? An expanding, leading diagonal. If you go in the daily, you're going to see it very clearly. Let's go in the daily. And bring that back. You have one wave up, you have a pullback, you've got another wave up, you've got a pullback, you have another wave up, and then you get your flat. See? So that's an expanding, and you notice we did have divergence here. You don't always see that divergence between the last 2. Remember, in expansion, you will not always see that divergence, but it's pretty easy to see now. And then you go up. See? It's all about seeing the patterns, understanding. First, you have to know the internal structures of what they would look like, and then it becomes pretty easy for you to see them. Right? So you got an expanding leading diagonal here. We broke out of the pattern slightly. Very often you'll see they will not break very much out of it. You got a perfect flat and then up you go. Remember I said when the impulse starts to look very messy here, you look for a 1, a 2, and a 3 in a very large expanding flat. I think you guys can figure out most of them now. You got another large expanding flat here. That's the expansion. So, good question, Rory. Let's start with that part. He said it's still confusing to pick them up, and I'll tell you what is the confusion. I can tell you immediately what is your problem, because I've been doing this pretty long time with traders. Your problem is you haven't memorized the patterns as yet. The only reason most of you cannot identify the patterns so easy in here is you don't know the patterns at your fingertips, which means you have to memorize them. There's no other way, guys. There's no shortcut to that. The only way you're gonna know, see this pattern very clearly is by memorizing it. And if you're absolutely new to my room, I can do an experiment to show you how easy it is, that if you don't memorize it, you will not know it, right? All my old traders here will start to put their guess as to what I'm going to name. So I'm going to give you a name and you tell me what that is, right? It's easy for you to understand the concept that if you don't memorize them, you will not know it. I'll just give you a name and you try to figure out what that is, right? We okay with that? Everybody okay with that? Let me find a name that I haven't used before, because some of my old traders already know the names. They're looking for those names that they know and they're going to start to figure out what it is, right? So I'll find a name that you guys haven't seen. Okay, let's go with Acidium. Tell me what that is. Ask Google, right? Ask Google very fast. Here's the problem. You have no idea what that is, right? And the reason you have no idea is because you've never heard the name before. You've never seen one. If I show you one, I promise you for the rest of your life, you will not forget what it looks like. See? It's like if I say apple, immediately all of you picture an apple, right? Your brain is already, you see all the different types of apple that you know, right? You immediately start to see all of them. It's the same thing with the patterns. We're going to show you, I'm pretty sure if all of you see an expanding flat, expanding diagonal, you will recognize it immediately. It will not take you a single minute to say, oh, well, I think we're making an expanding leading diagonal here. Or a contracting flat, or a running flat, or an expanding flat. You will start to recognize them. Right? You will start to do that. The problem is you have to know them. You have to memorize those patterns. You have to memorize every single one of them. And then you take the chart, you take a single chart, take everything out of it, starting from the monthly, tell me what patterns you see, go to the weekly, find all the patterns. Remember, the entire chart is a single pattern. Start with the basic concept that the entire chart is a single pattern, right? And as you go down, you're going to have many, 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 many more patterns within a pattern. So you're going to go to the weekly and find all the patterns. You have to name and label all of them. You're going to go to the daily and find all the patterns within the patterns and name and label all of them. You're going to go into the 4 hour and the 1 hour and the 15 minute and do that. And when you think you got everything well labeled down and perfect, take out everything and start back again. Every time you think this thing is so easy, I got it perfect, take everything out and go back at it again. And this time, after you've already looked back at the webinars, go back at it and try again. Because when I look at the chart, sometimes more often, I tend to see things that I missed. And I'm pretty sure I know all the patterns very well, but I still see things in a different light, I take out everything from my charts and I relook at it, and then I relook and I was like, okay, what is this pattern? What happens here? What could this possibly be making? Based on what you have in the past and based on what you're expecting in the bigger picture to do. Right? So you've got to do that, and you've got to do it over and over and over and over before you can see it. So first thing first, you have to memorize them. There's no exception to that. And after you've memorized all the pattern, I think there are people in this room who have finished the course more than a year ago and still hasn't memorized all the pattern. And they struggle because of that. So the fastest you want to get over this is the fastest you have to memorize every single thing, all the patterns, and then label them and identify them in the chart. The more you identify them in the chart, the easier it becomes for you to identify. We are here to help you. We are to guide you through as you do that. So for today in our pass, we'll stop here. Tomorrow we'll continue patterns. We look at triangles. We look at flats. You will start seeing flats all over the place. We'll relook at diagonals. We'll relook at all the other patterns that we have. All right? So tomorrow is a continue. Let's go with questions now. I could either stop the recording and take the questions because it's already an hour. So the questions are not in the recording. It's going to be too long for people to watch. So I'll stop it